let me just give you a thought experiment here. What if I said that I don't believe in the external world, that I'm going to deny that? You'd say, well, yeah, we can see it. Yeah, well, I don't believe we can trust our senses. Well, we can hear it. Well, I don't believe we can trust our ears. Well, you can taste it, touch it, smell it. I don't believe we can trust any of those senses. Well, I'm sure you would say that is extremely, extraordinarily skeptical, right? The same is true when it comes to moral perception. What argument would somebody have to give you for you to deny your sensory perception, that you're not seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, or hearing? What argument would they have to give? It would have to be a huge argument, some kind of a defeater that would be able to defeat your own senses. It seems to me that the same is true when it comes to perceiving moral values and duties. Now, people will say, yeah, but morality, not everyone agrees on morality. That's true. That's quite true. Not everyone agrees on most areas of knowledge. You realize that, right? I mean, there's some areas, fundamental math, stuff like that, logical truths that are just 100% certain. But when we get into other realms of knowledge, we do not have 100% certainty, and we have disagreement. But just because there's disagreement, that shouldn't mean that the subject matter is therefore illusory, that it doesn't exist. Let me give you an example from sensory perception. What number is that listed right there? Now, 95% of people watching this could say that that is the number 15. 4.5% can't read, can't perceive that number. Why? Because they're colorblind. They can't perceive that number. Well, just because 5% of people can't perceive that number, does that mean that it's incumbent on me to say that I can't clearly see that number? Well, of course not. Of course that's not the case. Color blindness in some people doesn't mean that we should have blindness for all people. In fact, morality is very clear when it comes to the moral extremes. Like if you got a room of people, 100 people, and you said, do you believe that torturing a baby for fun is morally right? Or do you believe that hunting a human being for sport is morally wrong? Or do you believe that the Inquisition was morally right? Or the Crusades? Or I should say the rape and pillaging and murder in the Crusades? Or you could go right on down the line. Eventually, you're going to come to something that somebody says, no, that's really wrong. Not just your opinion? No, not just my opinion. Torturing a baby for fun is not just my opinion. It's really wrong. There's something about that, the act of torturing a baby, that's wrong. Well, if we could just prove that one thing in the world is objectively morally wrong, then we have shouldered the burden of proof for this premise. We've effectively said that there exists something that is objectively morally right or morally wrong. It seems like it's very helpful in this regard to reflect on your own moral life. You know, when we're harming other people, very frequently, it's easy to write off the idea that there's something wrong about what we're doing. Like when we steal from other people, we might justify it. When we lie, we justify it. However, when someone steals from us, when someone lies to us, when someone hurts us, all of the sudden our blood pressure goes through the roof. And I don't want you to think, well, that's just because we've been harmed and we don't like the feeling of pain. No. That's not right. See, someone could accidentally trip you. You know, you could be walking down the street, someone could accidentally trip you, you could fall and skin your chin on the ground, hurt yourself, and you could stand up and the person could say, hey, buddy, that was an accident. I'm so sorry. And you could be in a lot of pain from what he did to you. Somebody else could intentionally trip you, but fail to harm you. They could try to trip you, but you could stumble and catch your balance. Who would you be more angry at? The person that accidentally tripped you and hurt you, or the person that intentionally tried to harm you and didn't? See, what we're showing here is that morality is more than just pleasure and pain or happiness and sorrow, that there's something about the action itself that is in play here. So, this is very similar to sensory perception. And indeed, morality is quite easy to perceive. It wouldn't be 4.5% of people would say that the Inquisition was immoral. It would be more like 99.99% of people. In fact, the rest of those people that say that there's nothing wrong with doing horrendous acts of evil, they don't need philosophy, they need a psychiatrist, because I don't know what to do with someone who is that morally colorblind, I guess you could say, unable to perceive right from wrong. Now, I'm going to show you a couple of examples, and these are pretty gruesome. So if you don't want to look at this, you don't have to. So I'm just warning you right now. I'm going to give you some examples of things which are evil. Here we go. This is a picture of baby Riley. He was being neglected and starved to death by his parents, who were addicted to drugs in the other part of the house, and other family members or neighbors could hear the screams of this little child over the loud music and the partying of the parents. And they came in to find this malnourished, sickly baby. And the parents, their defense was that they were too lazy to go help their child. What do you call that? What is that? Well, I don't like it. I don't personally like it. We're not asking what you like. We're asking what is that out there? A case in 2014 was that 2 Indian policemen and a gang of men raped a 14 and 15-year-old girl, and then they hanged these 2 young women from a tree. And the people in the community refused to cut down the bodies because they wanted justice to be served in their community. What is it that you call that? That you personally just don't like young women being raped? That you personally find that repulsive? Or is there something about that, the action itself, that is, what's the word? Evil, wrong. There's something about the action that's wrong, not about your personal feelings regarding it. Emmett Till was the young man by the age of 14 who had allegedly catcalled at a 21-year-old white woman. And the white woman sent 2 men to Emmett Till's house who abducted him, tortured him, murdered him, and then threw his body into the river. As it turned out later, Emmett Till didn't do anything wrong. Not that that would even begin to justify what happened to him, but he didn't catcall to that woman. That was all a lie. The all-white jury acquitted the 2 murderers. Well, when the time for the funeral came, Emmett Till's mother decided that it would be an open casket. Now, why would she have an open casket? She said this. Mamie Till said, "Let the people see what I have seen." Under her view, if people could just see what happened here, if they could just see the effects of gross racism in the South, they could perceive it. They could perceive that it was wrong. It's when we don't look at it, when we don't see it, that all of a sudden we can live in an ivory tower and say, well, we don't know if we believe in morality. Philosophizing with our leather-bound books and our mahogany furniture off in the middle of nowhere, that's where we can say, we don't know if evil exists or good exists. But when you're in the real world, like the rest of us, you see this quite clearly. So moral perception is similar to sensory perception. Anyone denying it, the burden of proof is on them to show me why I shouldn't believe in my moral perception, which I can perceive quite clearly. Let me just say this. Moral perception can actually be a stronger form of knowledge than scientific knowledge. You know, if someone was to say to me, hey, in the newspaper, it just turns out that torturing an innocent person for fun is morally right, I would not believe that. I would not believe that. But if somebody said, you know, hey, Pluto isn't a planet anymore. Pluto isn't a planet. You know, I wouldn't bat an eye. I'd just ask, what's for breakfast? That wouldn't bother me one bit. As it turns out, Pluto isn't a planet anymore. So it shows that scientific knowledge could be far less knowable, far less certain than moral knowledge. My knowledge that committing certain crimes or certain evils is wrong is stronger than other forms of knowledge. Finally, moral perception is incredibly difficult to practice in reality, in real life. For example, Richard Dawkins. As I support Darwinism as a scientist, I am a passionate anti-Darwinian when it comes to politics and how we should conduct our human affairs. Or Rodney Brooks, who is famous for saying that humans are a, quote, big bag of skin full of biomolecules. Thanks, Rodney, for that apt description. He says this, when I look at my children, I can, when I force myself, see that they are just machines. But that is not how I treat them. I interact with them on an entirely different level. They have my unconditional love, the furthest one might be able to get from rational analysis. I maintain two sets of inconsistent beliefs. Well, how's that for a worldview? On the one hand, he says, I look at my kids and they're just biochemical machines, and yet I don't treat them that way. I treat them with love and value, almost as if the law of God is written on our hearts, Romans 2:14 and 15. That what God has made known, he's made evident within us, Romans 1:19. And that it actually takes effort to push against what God has created in the world. That we can deny God, but we're still fated to live in the world which he has created. Peter Singer faced this himself when his mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Now, if you remember, Peter Singer said that the reason that humans have value is that they have sentience. But when his mother started to lose her cognitive ability and her sentience, what moral value did his mother possess? Well, Michael Spector, the interviewer, pressed Peter Singer on this and said, you've said before that we should actually euthanize babies up to the 4th trimester. That's 3 months out of the womb. He said actually even as far as 3 or 4 years old. He called that a, quote, fuzzy case. A 3 or 4-year-old might not constitute being worthy of life. That's a subject for another day. However, when it came to his mother having Alzheimer's, she lost sentience. So Michael Spector really pressed him on this, and this is what Peter Singer had to say. He said, I think this has made me see how the issues of someone with these kinds of problems are really very difficult. Perhaps it is more difficult than I thought before, because it is different when it's your mother. Yes, that's right. Now, I'm not putting that up there to say that Peter Singer is a hypocrite. I'm putting that up there to say this. Peter Singer has been in the academy for 50 years, formulating all of his ethics. Now, you put all of that up against his love for his mother. Which thing won? 50 years of study in the academy and teaching and writing books and lecturing around the world that humans don't have moral value unless they have sentience, or loving your mother. He spent tens of thousands of dollars to take care of his mother. I'm just saying that what won in the end is his moral perception. I agree with this ethicist who says an ethical judgment that is no good in practice must suffer from a theoretical defect. That's right. If you can't live this out in reality, there's something wrong with the theory. Who said that, by the way? Peter Singer said that. So Peter Singer is calling himself a hypocrite so that I don't have to.